Hello, hello. All right, I'm trying to knock these out on my leave home with my new baby boy. He's actually right here next to me. You gonna listen to my Bible study, buddy? I'm gonna try and get one a day done, hopefully. But today we're moving on to Leviticus 10, and this is an interesting one. I'll probably go on some tangents here, so just be ready. But this is, again, right after the priests have been kind of sanctified, I guess, or inaugurated would be a good way to put it, into their role. And now we're going to get into actually the death of two of Aaron's sons who got a little, well, I don't know, impatient, cocky. We'll find out, I guess. This is, again, Leviticus chapter 10. Aaron's sons Nadab and Abihu took their censers, put fire in them, and added incense, and they offered unauthorized fire before the Lord, contrary to his command. So fire came out from the presence of the Lord and consumed them, and they died before the Lord. Moses then said to Aaron, "This is what the Lord spoke of when he said, 'Among those who approach me, I will be proved holy. In the sight of all the people, I will be honored.' Aaron remained silent." Okay, so let's go to the commentary. We'll stop right there. Aaron, of course, there's a couple of things you can look at. First of all, that would suck from the parent Aaron's standpoint. Now, his sons are both adults. They're not little children anymore, but they're still his sons. You know, he still obviously cares and loves for them, and he just saw them die. But they died at the hands of the Lord because they didn't obey his commands. Now, did they do anything necessarily evil? You know, maybe from our point of view, you know, what's the big deal? They didn't murder anyone, they didn't rape anyone, they didn't steal or cheat, but they 100% went against the direct commandments of the Lord and did things their own way. So let's look at the commentary, and then I'll have a few things of my own to add. So, in the afterglow of the consecration, the inauguration consecration experience, which both of these, Nadab and Abihu, were part of, these two sons of Aaron sought to connect with God on their own way, apart from the specific ceremonies God revealed to them. Now, we don't know their exact motivation. Could have been pride, ambition, jealousy, impatience. Maybe, you know, the repetition of all the stuff, the sacrifice and everything got too tedious, and they wanted a new thrill to break what they considered boredom. Whatever it was, these two had witnessed all the miracles, you know, all of them. The pillar of fire, the Red Sea, the plagues in Egypt. So they knew the power and the majesty of God. All right, so he commanded them to do it a certain way. They came in an unauthorized way, coming to the Lord, but demanding to come according to their preference. Therefore, God considered this profane before the Lord. This was a misuse of special incense. This incense was regarded as holy to the Lord. It wasn't to be used in someone's experiment with God. Profane fire was a fire not kindled from the altar of burnt offering. It was a fire not associated with the atoning and redeeming work of sacrifice. All right. I will talk more about this as we get into it, but this is one of those examples of the Old Testament God is mean and vengeful, and the New Testament God is the loving, you know, caring, forgiving one. Now, I don't see things that way. I think it's the same God, obviously. I see plenty of forgiveness in the Old Testament and love. I see plenty of, you know, judgment and punishment in the New Testament. So I disagree with that. But what I do see here is something that, as like a elementary, middle school PE teacher, I see all the time, and it kind of gets on my nerves, is that, first off, kids don't follow directions, and what's worse is they know now that there's no consequences to it. You know, and you've been a kid, or I've been in the military, and you get directions, you're like, what's the point? It's tedious, it's ridiculous. But there's a saying, especially in engineering in the Navy, that these rules are written in blood. Something has happened to people. That's why we have these rules. They're there for a reason. The kids in my PGym, they know they're not supposed to get on the stage, but they always want to climb on the stage. Well, why can't they get on the stage? Because then they can fall off. It's dangerous. They can screw around. Balls are flying around. You get hit by a ball, you fall off the stage. Boom. It's a big deal. We as a society have grown accustomed to just kind of doing things our own way. What's the big deal? Why do I have to follow these exact instructions? I'll just do it my way. It's not a big deal. And then we do it, and then there's no consequences or punishments or actions, so what's the big deal? Here there is. There's a direct and immediate consequences. And again, it's to show, these were my rules. I'm the Lord. I put down specific rules on how to handle these situations. If you want to do it your own way, there will be consequences. And not only does this show the people how dire serious it is to follow his commandments exactly right off the get-go, but also we don't know what's going on in their hearts. Were they really trying to just connect to the Lord? I love the connection with the Lord. I want another chance to do it. I want to feel even more connected to him. Or were they doing it, like I said, was it out of pride, jealousy, boredom, spitefulness? What was in their heart when this happened? That's something that you always have to take into account. We don't know, but God does know. What was their internal motivation behind it? All right, a bit of a tangent, but I do think that's a big thing, is people assume that there's no consequences to their actions, and then we're blown away when there is. But once everyone saw those consequences there, what do you think? You think that they were going to follow the law or the directions of God to the detail after that? I would assume so, at least for a while. Moses summoned Mishael and Elzaphan, sons of Aaron's uncle Ezeal, and said to them, "Come here, carry your cousins outside the camp, away from the front of the sanctuary." So they came and carried. Oh, buddy, it's okay. Just a second. Yeah. All right. So we'll see how this goes. All right. So they came and carried them, still in their tunics, outside the camp, as Moses ordered. Then Moses said to Aaron and his sons, Eleazar and Ithamar, all these names, "Do not let your hair become unkempt, and do not tear your clothes, or you will die, and the Lord will be angry with the whole community. But your relatives, all the Israelites, may mourn for those the Lord has destroyed by fire. Do not leave the entrance to the tent of meeting, or you will die, because the Lord's anointing oil is on you." So they did as Moses said. Then the Lord said to Aaron, "You and your sons are not to drink wine or other fermented drink whenever you go into the tent of meeting, or you will die. This is a lasting ordinance for the generations to come, so that you can distinguish between the holy and the common, between the unclean and the clean. And so you can teach the Israelites all the decrees the Lord has given them through Moses." All right. So clearly, it's pretty obvious. They're not allowed to drink fermented wine when they're doing their duties. Look at Big Bear, Not that he's a priest, but he's a rabbi. You're not supposed to be under the influence of anything when you're doing God's work. You're not supposed to have that inability to, as it says, distinguish between holy and common. Owen always talks about how since he quit drinking and since he quit watching pornography, how much clearer he could see the world. It's discernment is what he's talking about. He has better discernment. And you don't have this ability when you're drunk, when you're tipsy, when you're unfocused. And that's what he's saying here, is you have to have this focus, this ability, because these people are counting on you. And if you don't have it, then, how are they going to trust you? How are they going to know what you're saying? And how are you going to trust what you're saying? God's not going to be clearly in your head if you're under the influence in some way. So let's see what the commentary has to say. Oh, it's okay, buddy. You and your strong neck. Hey, buddy. Hey, buddy. All right. So when it says, do not uncover your heads nor tear your clothes, lest you die. This perhaps was the hardest day of Aaron's life. 2 of his sons were suddenly killed under the judgment of God and could not mourn them. To mourn them might have implied, even in the slightest way, that God was wrong. So that's why they weren't allowed to tear their tunics or anything. And again, they're not just there for themselves anymore. They're now, the spiritual motivation, I guess would be the word, the backbone of the community. So if they are tearing and mourning, and even in the slightest, there could be a couple people who are like, well, yeah, even our own priests disagree with what God did. Look at them mourning their brother. I can't believe God killed their brother just for anointing fire, just for having a sacred fire in the wrong way, God gave you a direct rule. That's what's so crazy to me, is God's God. It's like, again, I'm not trying to say that public schools are a wonderful thing or anything like that. But at school, these kids have even the good kids have very little respect for authority. It's like, okay, you're an authority figure, but I don't really need to listen to what you have to say. But that's not the truth. That's not the way God intended this world to be. And it's certainly not the way he intended his law and his directions to be interpreted. You follow him. You listen to him. There has to be an understanding of authority and that there's consequences for not following that authority. I don't know, and I'm not here to judge the hearts of the 2 men, Nadihab and however you say the other one who died. But, they may very well have been saved, when Christ came and their sins are forgiven. They may have been people of faith. They just kind of lost their way a little bit there at the end. We don't know, but there still has to be consequences for their actions. I like this line. It says, indeed, common sense itself shows that neither a drunkard nor a sot should ever be suffered to minister in holy things. Exactly. Okay, this is one more reason why, they're fun. Big Bear's White Claw moments were hilarious. But his real teaching, his real rabbihoodship began when he quit drinking. Christopher Gardner was just on the other day, and they talked about how he's just a guy at the bar. That's what Owen is. Has a skill of talking. And I've met no one on his level, but I've met people like him. Love to hang out with the older generation, my grandparents and my parents' friends. And especially at that era, there's a few in each generation in small towns who can just talk and tell stories, and people want to listen. And they're the people at the bar. They may not, a lot of times they end up being drunkards because they just keep drinking at the bar because that's where we meet up. But there are those who don't drink and are able to do it. And those are the ones that you really gain insight and knowledge from. Okay, I'm sorry. We'll move on. Moses said to Aaron and his remaining sons, Eleazar and Ithamar, take the grain offering left over from the food offerings prepared without yeast and presented to the Lord, and eat it beside the altar, for it is most holy. Eat it in the sanctuary area, because it is your share and your son's share of the food offerings presented to the Lord, for so I have been commanded. But you and your sons and your daughters may eat the breast that was waved and the thigh that was presented. Eat them in a ceremonial clean place. They have been given to you and your children as your share of the Israelites' fellowship offerings. The thigh that was presented and the breast that was waved must be brought with the fat portions of the food offering to be waved before the Lord as a wave offering. This will be the perpetual share for you and your children, as the Lord has commanded. Then Moses inquired about the goat for the sin offering and found that it had been burned up, and was angry with Eleazar and Ithamar, Aaron's remaining sons, and asked, why didn't you eat the sin offering in the sanctuary area? It is most holy. It was given to you to take away the guilt of the community by making atonement for them before the Lord. Since its blood was not taken into the holy place, you should have eaten the goat in the sanctuary area, as I commanded. Aaron replied to Moses, today they sacrifice their sin offering and their burnt offering before the Lord, but such things as this have happened to me. Would the Lord have been pleased if I had eaten the sin offering today? When Moses heard this, he was satisfied. Okay, so you can see here, this to me is a passage where it's really emphasizing, and again, understand this is very early in the rejuvenation of the Hebrew faith. Again, we had Adam, before the flood. We had all this, then afterwards Noah, Shem, and then Abraham and his descendants, coming back to this religion, the true religion, monotheism, the one true God, righteousness, justice, love. And it's early. So what this was reminding me of is boot camp in the Navy, actually. Now, I'll explain myself. When it's very early on like that, you really have to establish that authority matters. There's consequences for your actions. You have to follow directions to the detail. Okay? If you don't follow the parachute exactly properly, it won't come out properly for the person who's using it. Someone's dead. If you don't do your MRC card exactly as it says in the Navy when you're doing engineering maintenance or something, then that piece of equipment, $1 million piece of equipment, could break down very quickly, or you could hurt yourself or somebody else. Somebody could die. All right, even in other branches of the military where they're more weapons oriented, there's detailed rules of how to handle the weapons, or people can die. The equipment can break down. Something can happen. There's severe consequences. So even if you don't cause someone to get hurt or die and the equipment's fine, but you don't follow that exact detail, they're on you. They're on your ass like that. And that's what I see happening here. Again, this is at boot camp to establish that these rules matter. You have to follow things to the detail, and you have to respect the authority, or there's consequences. This is the same thing. They're basically in boot camp. They're in the 40 years, the desert sort of thing. They're wandering. This is their boot camp time. This is where they really need to establish the rules. This is how things work, and there are consequences if you don't follow my rules. I was in Navy boot camp. It's not physically demanding at all, but it's mentally stressful. That's what they're trying to do, is stress you out. I remember one of the first things we did was we got all our gear, and we had to label it. Now, each thing has a kind of a different way they do it, and it's all to see if you're paying attention, if you're following directions. They ended up making me yeoman, which is like our division's secretary, because I had good handwriting, and I didn't mess up any of my labels. But it's just funny to see, because, you got all your underwear, your PT gear, your NWUs, all of your dress uniforms, and it's like, okay, on the inside pant leg patch on your left leg of your NWUs, write your first name, initial, and then your full last name. On your tops of your NWUs, on the collar tag, just write your 3 initials. On your PT gear, on the tag around the waistband, I want you to write just your first and last initials, no middle one. So they kind of change it up, and people will get ahead of them or think that they know what they're doing, and then they'll mislabel one, and it's just blah, 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 drop it, give me push-ups, are you idiot, how are you not following? Like, they're on you, like the fire of the Lord consuming these two, because you're not following the directions to a T. Do you not think that I'm giving these directions for a reason? Do you not think I've thought these directions out? Do you not respect my authority? Do you not think that these rules matter? Are you above these rules? Are you somehow special? You don't have to follow them? That's what they're doing to you. They're making you understand that these rules are important, and that their authority is important, and it's there for a good reason, and you need to follow the directions, which is exactly, in my opinion, what's happening here. It's early on in the priesthoods, early on in the new religion of monotheism that's being reestablished after the flood, after the Exodus, because they've kind of fallen away and fallen into the ways of the Egyptians. So it's being reestablished, and so they're in boot camp. They're in that these are the rules. There's going to be major consequences if you don't follow them. You have a little bit of doubt, 40 years wandering. Moses strikes a rock out of impatience with the Israelites. He doesn't get to go to the promised land. These two sons of Aaron don't follow the rules exactly on how to have holy fire in front of the Lord, and they try to do it their own way. Severe consequences. Okay, how does this apply to our lives today then? Is fire going to come out and consume us? Probably not. But what it shows us is that we have to, even if we disagree, even if we think they're tedious or boring, we have to follow the directions of the Lord. They're there for a good reason. He's there trying to help us, trying to guide us, trying to do what's best for us. And I'm sure it annoys him when we don't listen to it, or when we do hear it, we do understand it, but we still do it our own way. I'm sure that just drives the Lord insane. All right. I hope everyone has a wonderful afternoon, evening, or good night, and God bless.